Okay, we're back with Stephen Hewer. Stephen, you're good for me to record this?
I am.
Okay, good. Okay, if you haven't watched our first interview with Stephen, I'm really happy to have him back again because a lot of what he's going to talk about today is very real to me, not just personally, but also because I have so many friends that are dealing with bone loss, osteoporosis, gum recession, things like that. So we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about some of the things that Stephen is using to help people reverse these things. Stephen is a naturopath. Now, when I posted the first video, I had somebody just put all the little emoticons for just roll it on the floor laughing. It's not naturopath, it's naturopath. And they were just laughing me out to the universe, and
Yeah.
I very calmly replied, there is a difference. Look it up.
Yeah.
And so you are a naturopath.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks to Dr. Gary Martin, who created a school in Arizona years ago called the American College of Naturopathy. He focused the central core of his teachings was based around Kerry Reams, Dr. Kerry Reams,
Yes.
and all the nutrition knowledge that was available today was compiled into these big notebooks, and I studied that for several years to get the Bachelor of Science degree as a naturopath, and I'm grateful for that as a foundation. It was invaluable knowledge. It's wonderful information.
Yeah, and I suppose in studying that you had to understand quite a bit about human physiology and
Yeah,
how the
you have to
body
go
actually
through.
works.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, you're taught in that respect as well. Not probably as thoroughly as a physiologist, but it's natural that you have to understand the basics of how the body works hormonally, digestively. Yeah.
Yes, that's fascinating. And one of the recently, I've got your Synergy One, and I was looking at this paper that you sent me along with this, and I appreciate you sending this stuff to me. And you mentioned in here about the telomeres, and I have a couple of older presentations where I talk about telomeres and how important that is to the age of our cells. And so I don't want to elaborate too much. I want to give you time to just jump into what you want to share. But I do have with me a couple of the products that I am taking that deal with bone loss. One is the one that we talked about before. That's the Calronic. And I want to be sure to mention right here at the get-go that the name of this has been changed to Atomic Calcium. So if you go on Stephen's website, which is www.synergisticnutrition.com. And you could still find the Calronic there if you type it in, but its new name is Atomic Calcium. And then I mentioned the Synergy One, which is a human growth factor. And I'm going to let Stephen talk about that. And then I'm also taking the Living Silica. So, Stephen, I want you to just jump in, just take the bull by the horns here. I'm going to spotlight you and I'm going to let you explain all these things and also just let you know we appreciate you being with us again today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to you too, Dana, for your passion on this subject and devotion to uncovering nature's secrets and sharing them with the world that you find, and gathering the tribe of people you have to listen to this subject in this interview. I'm grateful to you too.
Yes,
Um,
praise the
so
Lord.
yeah, that you asked the question, or you wanted me to go into what are the causes of bone loss in more detail in this interview. And so that's what I was going to talk about. So basically, one of the ones that was first discovered was by Dr. Melvin Page. So Dr. Melvin Page was a very well-known dentist, and in the 50s and 60s and 70s, he wanted to understand why cavities were occurring in his patients or clients, and did 40,000 blood tests on these many thousands of his dental patients, and found that there was a certain ratio imbalance of calcium to phosphorus. So the ideal ratio of calcium to phosphorus was supposed to be 10 to 4. So 10 parts calcium in the blood to 4 parts phosphorus. In that state, your body's in a state where it's making new bone, no problem. And he found that what controlled to a large degree, what controlled the levels of this ratio of calcium to phosphorus was your own endocrine gland system and how healthy it functioned. So he found that trace minerals were required in the diet on a daily basis to support the endocrine gland system to function optimally. So the metabolism was optimal. The body had an easier time maintaining this ratio of calcium to phosphorus in the blood. He also found that the people that he came into his office, sometimes they would actually have perfect teeth, but then at some point in their life visiting him, they developed cavities, and then he would investigate and found that it was due to sugar consumption. So he found that when someone would consume 4 ounces of chocolate, that within 2.5 hours, the calcium phosphorus levels would drop below the bare minimum. So it's like 8.75 to 3.5 milligrams per blood. So basically 3.75 milligrams of calcium to I'm sorry, 8.75 milligrams of calcium to 3.5 milligrams of phosphorus. It would drop below that after you ate sugar 4 ounces or more. And then that would put you in a state where your body would start to demineralize your teeth and cause cavities, or put you in a condition where with repeated doing that, you develop cavities. So in all of his research, he found that he found that glandular extracts was part of restoring the endocrine gland system's ability to maintain this ideal balance. Some people have such robust glandular systems that even though they eat sugar, not necessarily all the time, but on and off, it's a part of their diet, and they still don't develop cavities. It's because they were born genetically with very healthy glands that are able to maintain the level of calcium and phosphorus in the ideal ratios despite the sugar in the diet. So for most people, though, a lot of people, they will develop cavities, and the way you overcome that is supplementation. He did glandular extracts, he did trace minerals, and then a better diet, avoiding sugar.
Can I just ask something here quick, Stephen? I'm sorry to break your train of thought, but
Oh.
I think an important point to make here is it's not just white sugar that we dip up by the teaspoonful into our tea or whatever. Sugar is in a lot of forms in our foods and breads and things like that as well.
Yeah, it was apparently the sugars that would enter the system more quickly. And so that would be the refined sugar. So any concentrated sugar. So I'm extrapolating based on personal experience now here, because in my early 20s, I tried to do mostly fruitarian diet in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for a few years, and for the first 6 months, I did like 85% fruit diet. So I started losing my teeth. My enamel wore off, and they were very, anything sweet or cold was now very painful to the nerves in my teeth because they become so exposed from my enamel loss. And so I read a dentist book on what to do and fixing your teeth, and I did it. Part of it was holding gel fluoride in your teeth, like, in your mouth, which isn't necessarily good for you. I didn't know any better at the time, but doing that, and I also held wheatgrass juice in my mouth. So I used to drink like 8 ounces of wheatgrass juice a day, grow many trays of it out myself, and held that in my mouth as another way to support perhaps remineralization of my teeth. And they did remineralize, they did re-enamelize, and got normal over about 5 months. And so that's my experience to say that even healthy God-created fruits in excess was, for me, and I think for most people, it's still an issue.
Yes.
So I was also a Seventh-day Adventist for 4 years of my life, from age 16 to 20. And that was a vegan diet. So I was vegan, and would every Sabbath, about once a month, there'd be, I think they called it Vespers. It was this gathering of potluck after Sabbath church ceremony. And so I noticed that the Seventh-day Adventists had a big sweet tooth, the ones that were vegan vegetarians.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And so it's been my observation and my experience during my times of trying to be a vegan vegetarian that my body doesn't maintain blood sugar well enough, mostly I think because of my adrenals. My adrenals got injured a long time ago. So because I don't maintain blood sugar well, I tend to crave sugars and carbs in excess. So I used to eat a lot of honey, all these different things that, in the end, imbalanced my system. So, it's sweets wise, it's even bad in excess if it's just fruits and dried fruits, and unless you have really robust glands that maintain your mineral balance. So then there's so yeah, I wanted to comment on this. So you sent someone to me, a gentleman that shared with me over the phone that he had severe bone loss. So we talked for a while, and then he said, and I've been vegan for 40 years. And I says, well, that's part of the problem. I said, unfortunately, the human digestive tract doesn't produce cellulase, the enzyme that breaks down cellulose. And so a plant-based diet is very high in cellulose. So all your plant cells that make up your grains and legumes and your leafy plants and whatever are cellulose structures. And that's one of the reasons you have to cook them to break them down enough to assimilate much from them. But even still, because of lack of attention to creating what's called high brix foods, the way Carrie Reams would grow it. So Carrie Reams discovered the whole way of making soils so fertile that all plants grew and produced high levels of mineral sugars in their plant material, in their cellulose. If you had access to really fertile soil, or fertile foods that were grown on fertile soil, high brix foods, it might be different for a person to be able to maintain the calcium to phosphorus ratios on a plant-based diet. But for most people, my experience and observation, because I used to do dark field microscopy, and when I had vegans come in to see me, they always had really good blood, really clean blood, low white blood cell count, which is kind of interesting on that. But they had gum problems, and they had tooth problems. They had cavities, and they had gum recession. Very, very common. And basically, I understand now it's based on the work of Melvin Page. It's because they're unable to maintain the calcium to phosphorus ratios on a plant-based diet, unless they're doing some form of supplementation that overcomes that. Or the exception is, and the caveat would be raw dairy in the diet. So lacto-vegetarian very likely would overcome that. And that is kind of what Ellen White of the Seventh-day Adventist Church taught, although that wasn't what the practicing Seventh-day Adventists I was with practiced.
Can I interject something there? I just want to give people a resource here, because I agree that, and I am a Seventh-day Adventist. Many people of my faith come to me almost weekly. I have gum problems. I have cavities. I have gum recession. And that's why I wanted to do this presentation. And many of us are wanting to get out to the country, grow our own food and all this stuff. I want to point people to a resource that will help you to get your soil in a condition that it needs to be to give your body the nutrition that you need. And that is, if you go to Berea Gardens, I think it's .org, but if you type in Berea Gardens Bob Gregory, you will find it. Bob has a DVD series teaching you right down to the cations and anions and all that stuff of balancing your soil pH and nutrition levels, so that your soil is in a condition that your plants can take up those nutrients. And the thing that a lot of people disagree with me and with Bob on is supplementation. I have so many people just hammer me that we should be getting all of our nutrition from our food. Well, Stephen, you and I agree, and I showed a chart on our last presentation from one of your papers that you sent me about how, and you refer to the BRICS level, the nutrition levels of soils in the United States are at 85% of what they were even 50 years ago.
And that was 1936. That was 1936 that Senate report came out where they acknowledged they were 85% deficient. So it's worse now.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to interject that. So if you want to learn how to balance your soils, go to Bob Gregory's site, get his DVD set, and learn how to do that.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing is that supplementation, I mean, basically it's, unfortunately, our minds, the way the mind works is whatever we're raised with, like from age infancy to 8, we don't have a filter on the mind. So we absorb all the information from our environment and take it in as what's required to survive in this world. And so we're conditioned to believe things that are outdated. So we're raised on food alone. In the 60s, when I was born and raised, it's food alone. Supplements didn't exist other than maybe a Chalk's multivitamin or something like that. Yeah, and come forward, that mentality of most people raised in that era is that their mind is conditioned to believe you get all your nutrients from your food. Supplementation is like a waste of time. And nothing could be further from the truth, because the demineralization of the soils, the lack of nutrients in the foods, and then the degree of pollution that's increased in our environments and in our lives has made it so our bodies have to contend with not only the car exhaust toxins, but plastic phthalates, toxins, and then the pesticides and herbicide toxins, then the electromagnetic fields, the Wi-Fi and the 4G and 5G, all these different signals that are now disrupting your cell's ability to function normally, to grab nutrients, to grab oxygen, to kick out wastes. And so there's so many things causing the body to be more likely to hold on to toxins that supplementation is life-saving. I know it's saved my life, and this is one of the reasons I've devoted my life to this field, is because the quality of my life has improved so dramatically from where it was that, I want everyone to feel fantastic every single day, because, that's the way God designed us to be. That's just the gift that God, intended us to have.
Yes, let me ask a question on that, Stephen, while we're on this topic. We hear a lot in the news about contamination in supplements and a lot of crooked, shady dealing among supplement companies. How can we know that what we purchase, whether it's from you, whether it's from some other practitioner, is not synthetic? It's if it is synthetic, it's cleanly done, it's bioidentical, it's safe, it doesn't have contamination in it. Address that for me.
You have to just, I personally would, if I don't see it on the label or on the product webpage or whatever, I contact the company and I'll ask them questions. So a lot of times, when I had a whey protein powder in my practice that was unique to my company, we were the only ones producing it that was cold sterilized. Everybody else heat sterilizes their whey. But they would say in the label, cold processed. They would say our whey is cold processed. So a lot of people then are deceived by marketing language, that thinking that means it's never been heated. And so I would always have to take the time to educate people and say, well, that's actually referring to the step after it's pasteurized, when they filter out the fat and they filter out the lactose. They don't have to add heat to the process, and so it's called cold filtered processed. It's meaningless. It's like saying antibiotic-free chickens. They don't give antibiotics to chickens. It's not part of their diet. That's like one of the animals that doesn't get it. But they use it as marketing language because you don't know any better. So, but with this whey protein that I work with, it was cold sterilized, and when you use cold to sterilize, you don't denature, change the shape of the proteins or amino acids. So now all these amino acids are usable. So, and all the peptides and all the proteins. So now you've got an immune system from an animal transferred to your body. The lactoferrin will take care of viruses. We've had people get rid of their COVID symptoms in 24 hours from taking our whey protein. One long hauler COVID for 2 years got rid of it in 6 months or 6 weeks on our whey protein, just because of having the addition of more lactoferrin in the system. So, but other companies, they'll say cold process when it's not. And, that's the kind of thing where you have to call them up, or they'll say, you have to ask them like what temperature it's heated to, because they don't disclose that. You just say, and so if it's 161 degrees or higher, that means it's pasteurized. So it's denatured. The products that I work with, you have the advantage when you work with me that I've already kind of been the filter for all of that, of the quality, and use them from myself. But you do have to do your own research and your own homework, because sometimes they put too much dicalcium phosphate in a tablet so that it's easy to make the tablet of the pill, but it won't break down. It'll stay unbroken down. That's why I remember there was one guy that used to clean porta potties and said that the amount of vitamins that were undissolved in like after you cleaned out the material, is all these pills that didn't dissolve in people's digestive tracts.
Wow.
Because they have too much dicalcium phosphate. Dicalcium phosphate can be used as a binder in the tablet in small amounts, and it will still dissolve. But there are brands on the market and in the past where they put too much and then it doesn't dissolve. I mean, so you just have to do your own research, and you can always consult with me on things, but I don't have a set answer for that.
Okay.
I know that NSF certification is now supposedly a bad thing because they, and I have to do a little more research on this, but they supposedly sterilize the ingredients. And I'm waiting to hear back on all the details about that. But supposedly NSF certification might be something that's not good, even though they're putting it as a badge of like honor that we've done this. We're working with some government agency to be NSF certified, and it actually might be a bad thing.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. So the other thing is, I've said this before, when you talk about causes of bone loss, and this is the one where the atomic calcium addresses it, is that the body's supposed to produce sufficient amounts of ionic calcium. So of the three different kinds of calcium in the blood, there's what's called protein-bound, chelated, palmodulin, and then free ionic calcium. So free ionic calcium is where it's not bound to any protein structure. It's in its electrically active state to participate in biochemical reactions and make bone and help adult stem cell production and help with cell division and maintaining intracellular pH at 7.35. And then that controls dissolved oxygen levels. And then that's a big deal. Now your mitochondria make energy more efficiently because you've got that proper intracellular pH that the ionic calcium contributes to. We make that particular form of calcium efficiently up to the age of 35, and after that our production declines. And so by the time you're in your 50s and 60s and 70s, you're deficient most of the time, or a lot of the time, in this key form of calcium that the body requires to make bone, to maintain bone density, and all these other beneficial functions. So because we're producing so little, and the parathyroid gland of your thyroid, there's got these 4 little dots of tissue on your thyroid gland that regulate and monitor the level of this ionic calcium. So when your body has this deficiency, less than 51%, then the parathyroid goes to work to say, we need to turn on parathyroid hormone production. And then the parathyroid works to dissolve bone to compensate. And then the bone is dissolved. Hydroxyapatite calcium from the bone is dissolved, which is a phosphorus calcium complex. And then that's dissolved as a crystalline structure into your blood. It doesn't actually compensate effectively. And so you never really shut off your parathyroid. And so in this chemistry state, your body is actually taking calcium and depositing it into the soft tissues. So your arteries and your heart and your brain and your soft tissues are turning to stone because of this unhealthy chemistry state. And so this is where this product comes in. We now call it atomic calcium. We used to call it Calronic, now we call it atomic calcium. And it's basically giving you 23.5 milligrams, which is the most generous dose of any product on the market, because there's only one other brand on the market, and it's 8 milligrams. And it's
And
very
a lot
expensive.
more expensive.
And very expensive. And so when I switched from the liquid margarine product over to this, I got better results with my teeth in terms of growing back lost tooth on the chewing surface of 9 of my teeth, where the pockets developed next to the fillings that grew back more than I got from being on margin. And then when I had a oral surgeon do a scan of my mouth, he said I had above average jawbone density after being on this product for 2 years, over 2 years.
So there's not a time limit that you can take the Calronic. You can take it.
You can take it ongoing, yeah, indefinitely. It's and then every day, once, twice a day. I vary the frequency with which I do it, just listening to my body. And usually it's only once a day in the morning now.
Okay.
And so that drink is the 1 scoop of atomic calcium, 1 tablespoon of colloidal minerals, and now I add my Ormus minerals. So are you familiar with Ormus minerals?
No.
So Ormus refers to, it's like a slang term for ORME. ORME is a acronym for orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements, which was discovered by David Hudson, who was a farmer who needed to treat his soils in Arizona with an hydrochloric acid solution to break up the hard pan. And then after he does that, this white mineral powder would appear on the surface of the soil. And at high noon, when the sun was hottest, the powder would just go poof into the air, like explode. So he studied it and found that there was these gold, iridium, and rhodium in what they analyzed, but in single atomic state. So instead of mostly when you see elements in nature, they're combined together. So there's like 33 atoms or more of iron or silver or copper or whatever. But when you can reduce the mineral down to single atoms or even small, 2 to 10 atoms, there's the absorption factor that's improved. And they have an effect on your nervous system and your cells. And so based on his research, he says like iridium and rhodium will interact with the damaged DNA of the cell and cause it to relax and recombine corrected. So they help maintain DNA integrity throughout the body. And that ruthenium, like this one lady did studies, and she found that when that mineral is in the body, it makes the electrons flow over the DNA 10,000 times faster. So then there is gold, which is naturally found in the nervous system of humans. And in its monoatomic state, it's an element that is sort of like the way that light and information and frequency is transferred through the human nervous system. So you get an enhanced level of mental clarity when you use this. So I now add a tablespoon of my, what's it called here? It's called Ocean Gold. I think it's Ocean Gold C11. Or no, the iridium, rhodium, and gold one. That's what I got. But basically, if you go to Ormus on my website, just type in Ormus, you'll see several choices. And there's Ormus Manifestation that a lot of people like. And then there's one that's gold, iridium, and rhodium. And anyways, that makes for this like, and then I also add 1 capsule of ozonated hemp oil. So then I swallow down this ozonated hemp oil, and that addresses my oxygen deficiency. And then you have all this oxygen, all this energy. You need less food. You have like 10 or 12 hours of really good energy all day from that morning drink. So very important drink. So basically, when you're taking the atomic calcium, you're putting your body into a chemistry state where the parathyroid no longer, it's signaled that it doesn't need to produce parathyroid hormone. It shuts off, and you stop dissolving bone, and you put yourself into a chemistry state where you're able to now make bone, remineralize bone. And, you know, you want to assist the body in turning over the old bone by taking vitamin A and vitamin D. So vitamin A and vitamin D not only help your immune system, but they participate in dissolving the old bone that could become brittle if it wasn't dissolved. So old bone has to be dissolved, and you get that effect from vitamin A, vitamin D. So I like to take Rosita cod liver oil, which is the best cod liver oil on the market. If you're going to be vegan, you're going to get your beta carotene from whatever, carrot juice, whatever. Turn some of that into vitamin A and vitamin D from the sun, or I think the Dr. Group's got a vitamin D from mushroom as a supplement, or algae or something. I can't remember. Or lichen. It's lichen, is it? Yeah, it's lichen.
Yeah. I use one that's actually from sheep's wool,
Yeah.
which even as a vegan, I don't really have a problem with that. But the company that I use is SBR Nutrition. They do have one that is algae based, and I've had good success with both.
Yeah.
The lanolin and algae based. And they
Yeah.
do have it is D3 and K2 together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, so that segues to K2 you just said. So that segues into this mentioning that K2, there's minoquinone 4 and minoquinone 7. Those are 2 forms of K2. So it's an interesting that studies have been done, and the minoquinone 4 is what's required for a baby to develop its skeleton inside the mother's womb. And that minoquinone 7 doesn't actually enter through the blood supply of the umbilical cord into the baby's body. And it might transform it into minoquinone 4. I'm not sure, but it's safe to say that minoquinone 4 is the kind that comes from, if you're going to eat butter from grass-fed cows or eggs from pastured chickens, then those are sources of vitamin A, D, and K2. And the K2 is minoquinone 4, not minoquinone 7. So minoquinone 7 comes from fermentation of soy as natto. And so basically that's a plant-derived version of vitamin K2, but it works good to decalcify the arteries. Its studies have been done on animals to help decalcify the arteries and support the whole bone formation process, activating the body's production of matrix GLA protein. Matrix GLA protein activates the osteoblasts to produce osteocytes, new bone cells, and the bone protein. So those 2 things together, so that I take minoquinone, I take megaquin D3 myself, so that's got the 5,000 IUD, and then also the 200 micrograms of K2. as MK7. And then, as far as further other things that support the bone, like I said in my video recently, there's 4 components to restoring bone density. So as far as bone loss, I've covered the ionic calcium part, the Melvin Page calcium to phosphorus ratio part, and the sugar component, and then there's a hormone component too. So when a woman goes through menopause and her estrogen levels drop, there's notorious that her bone loss starts occurring at a more rapid rate, and osteoporosis can set in. So lots of people out there are teaching just, stress, mechanical stress to the bones, weight-bearing exercises to support maintaining bone density. And that activates a estrogen receptor in the bones to support bone formation, to use mechanical stress and weight-bearing exercise. So it is valuable to do that, but the most important component in my observation to maintain bone density is your biochemistry. And hormones play a role. So the 2 hormones that play the most dominant role are estrogen and growth hormone. And so I work with that product, which we call Synergy 1. It's a spray, and it is a peptide, a growth factor peptide that the body produces. We keep the name of the peptide proprietary so it can remain exclusive since we can't patent it. But you normally can't absorb it under the tongue, but there's a delivery system that makes it so you can. So you do 3 sprays typically at bedtime and 3 sprays when you wake up. And then that translates into you raising your growth hormone levels and your IGF-1 levels to what they were when you were like 20 years younger. So that translates into you making new bone, because those two growth hormone factors, the one that's the main one, growth hormone, then the metabolite IGF-1, do cause bone formation to occur. And I've had a dentist call me and tell me, after being on our product for 6 months, just on that, this was before we even had atomic calcium, that he'd reversed his bone loss in his jawbone. And I had another lady do it in her spine and with the calcium. So that's really important. If a person wants to take advantage of the nutritional science that exists today and avail themselves of all the things that support bone formation, it's a combination of things. So I try and get people, if the funds permit on your end to do it, to do the Synergy 1, to the Megaquin D3, to do the silica. If you're a vegan, you want to do silica to support the collagen protein production in the body, because that's what it does. It stimulates collagen synthesis, and 90% of the bone structure is collagen protein. So, and then if you're not a vegetarian and you want to do collagen, you can do collagen. We have a really good collagen product called collagen peptide. And then there's that product from Russia called Osteo 3 Plus, which has got a peptide in it and it's animal derived, but it's the same bioidentical peptide the body produces to activate collagen protein synthesis. So Osteo 3 Plus has got a peptide in it called Sigomir, and Sigomir triggers your bone structure and your connective tissue structure to repair, rejuvenate, become younger, stronger, healthier. And then that, taking the collagen or the colloidal minerals gives you the trace minerals that Melvin Page discovered was part of maintaining the health of your endocrine system function. So if your endocrine system functions optimally because you've got the trace minerals, then you're able to maintain the calcium phosphorus ratios in the more ideal state of 10 to 4. So all those things is what I try and get people to take when they're trying to restore bone density and reverse gum recession, because the way I look at it is the one client I had years ago, Kate Graff, had severe gum recession. So she did the Synergy 1, the atomic calcium, and the cod liver oil product that we work with. On the cod liver oil, you can take 2 if you're not, philosophically vegan and you're okay with it, because it's got the vitamin A and vitamin D in it. So you get the vitamin A to help dissolve the old bone, and plus it's really good for your brain because it's got the DHA, and most of your fatty portion of your brain is supposed to do docosahexaenoic acid. So, but Kate Graff was able to reverse her gum recession in 6 months doing this atomic calcium, Synergy 1, and the cod liver oil, which meant she restored her jawbone density as well.
Well, let me comment on that, Stephen, with my own personal story. You and I were talking about it before we started recording. I my gum recession was so bad that I was not a candidate for a dental implant. After taking, I took like you, I took the margin for a time, but I couldn't financially sustain it. I think I took 4 bottles. It's like $450 a bottle. I mean, it's insane. And it's like an 8-ounce bottle. So I just couldn't do it. So my naturopath actually is the one who told me about Calronic, and then I found it on your site, and that's how I connected with you, was through the Calronic. And so I think I took 4 bottles of margin, which took me about 2 months, a little over 2 months. And then I switched to the Calronic, and it was within 3 months, I was now, quote, barely a candidate for dental implant. He said, you better hurry because you barely got enough bone. And I thought to me, this was a different dentist. Okay, so I had a scan done in North Dakota, not a candidate. Had another scan here 3 or 3.5 months later. You barely got enough. You better hurry. You better get this done now.
Oh
So
gosh. So they're trying
yeah,
to rush you. They're thinking you're going to regress even more. So they want to rush you to get an implant.
right. That's
Okay.
exactly what happened. And so I went ahead with it because I knew I was not regressing. I was actually gaining bone. And so my gum recession on my lower jaw was so severe that it was almost completely down to the bottom of my lip on the front of my tooth here. Now I could show you, but it won't show up on the camera. But if I pulled my lip down and show you, there's pink, healthy new tissue that's covering that deep gum recession. So my gums are coming up, and the reason my gums are coming up is because my bone is coming up.
Yeah. And the thing is, the growth factor you're taking, or the growth factor product that increases your growth hormone, will increase the rate at which you can
And this
grow.
is vegetarian. This is
Yeah.
vegan.
Yeah.
Vegetarian. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that. Good for you. And that makes me.
yeah, yeah, it makes me happy too, Stephen. I'm very thankful, and I'm thankful that we put, the gentleman that you talked about earlier that had severe osteoporosis is my dear friend, and we've been friends for many, many years. And is just. I actually started him on Calronic maybe a month before he talked to you, and then when he got his numbers back, it was so severe. The bone doctor told him, I've never seen numbers this bad. So we're making an experiment of him, and so we'll see what happens with these products. And so anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just going to say that I didn't cover a couple of things that cause bone loss. So one of them, of course, is cancer. I've had various clients with cancer tell me that the doctors are concerned they have such high calcium levels. And I go, well, think about it. A cancer is producing excessive amounts of lactic acid over and above the body's ability to metabolize and excrete. And so those acids are a threat to the blood pH. So the body's
Yes.
going to say, we need to keep the blood pH for
Yeah,
you to stay alive. We have to keep that blood pH in this certain window. So we're going to dissolve bone to compensate. So
makes sense.
yeah, so the cancer thing is, because of that excessively acid pH, in my opinion. And then just an excessively acid pH in your body without having cancer can contribute to bone loss because, we know that drinking soda pops, of course, there's phosphoric acid in them. So that's a pH of 2, which is very acid. That's a big threat. So you can imagine with every soda pop, an ignorant person that's drinking soda pops, each drink is, causing this severe shift in their chemistry and causing the body to be in crisis for a certain amount of time to make sure the blood pH stays neutral. So it's going to do something to reverse that by dissolving bone potentially if they don't have enough alkalinity in their system to deal with it already. And then the body makes more acids in a day than alkali. So we're already prone to tend towards excessive acidification if we're not doing something dietarily to compensate. And then you've got, cooked animal proteins. So in my case, I have to be careful. Cooked animal proteins, they're acid forming. They're the most acid forming just because of so many, amino acids and stuff. So, the tendency for most Americans that are not aware of all this stuff is that they become progressively more acidic. And then that leads to this whole demineralization of the bones to compensate. And then the other thing I was going to say is Melvin Page talked about the saliva being key to support the remineralization of the teeth. So, and this is what the dentist taught that I read about when I had my problem after being a fruitarian for 6 months. He said the saliva has the minerals in it to remineralize the teeth. So at night, you want to make sure you've flossed your teeth, water picked your teeth, and you brush your teeth so there's no food particles on it, because you don't want any of the bacteria in your mouth to grow upon the food particles on your teeth to produce the acids that continue to keep the enamel, etch away and thin the enamel. So your mouth's super clean, because then at night, when your mouth's closed and you're sleeping, the saliva is naturally got the calcium and the phosphorus to cause re-enamelization and remineralization of the bones. And so that's what I did for those months that I reversed that enamel loss. And so Melvin Page talks about that the saliva has to be able to buffer the acids in the mouth that are produced by bacteria. And so this is where I have a theory that Kerry Reams was incorrect in his conclusions that 6.4 and 6.4 were the ideal urine and saliva pH. So a couple reasons I say that for is that the blood is supposed to be 7.35, 7.45. And the blood pH, the blood makes lymph, and lymph makes saliva. So it's biological deduction. It's more likely that the saliva is supposed to be 7.5, 7.4 to 7.5. And then if I look at the book called The Calcium Factor by Bob Barefoot, and he cites the work of Dr. Carl Reich. Dr. Carl Reich converted his medical practice to a nutritional practice from 1950 to 1970. And he found that when he got his clients' pH, saliva pH up to 7.5, that their condition would go away or improve significantly. And then the other thing is that from the last time that you and I spoke, I got really interested in studying the subject more thoroughly about Kerry Reams, and I got the book by Betty Reams and read more about him, and read another book with Kerry Reams being interviewed in it. And he talked about how he created the first pH scale. The current pH scale is 1 to 14, but he created the first pH scale from 1 to 12. And then he said that his inspiration was that 6.4 was the ideal, saliva and urine pH. That would be about a little above the middle mark of the scale, right? 6 is the middle mark between 1 and 12. So 6.4 is a little bit more alkaline if that was a scale. But then he said the scientific community adopted a pH scale of 1 to 14. And so he basically switched to the pH scale that the scientific community adopted, 1 to 14. But he never changed the 6.4 number. So part of me questions, how can you he came up with a 1 to 12 pH scale and came up with the 6.4 as the middle, and then changed it to 14, but didn't change the middle scale to from 6.4 to 7.4. And so I've studied with other people on this subject that spent a lot of time studying pH, urine and saliva, and took those trainings, and they say it's 7 to 7.4 is the ideal saliva pH. And so when I take the atomic calcium and my colloidal minerals in the morning and stuff, I always maintain a saliva pH of 7.5. And I feel much better than when I don't take them and I maintain a pH of 6.4. And then, as I said before, you've got the Hunza people that live to be 120 to 140 years of age, and they're a unique culture that their water they drink is so full of calcium and trace minerals that they're never going to be mineral deficient. Their food supply supplies it from their irrigation to their fields. Then they drink that water. So theoretically, they're not only getting the trace minerals, but they're getting a lot of alkalinizing calcium in their drinking water every day to compensate for the natural tendency for the body to be acidic. So they are keeping their body in that more alkaline state by that water supplementation. And they're the longest lived people on the planet. And so I go, this is, I think, what's the missing piece for the longevity. So the Bible says man's now supposed to live 77, so that's 120 years. So my question then is like, we're not drinking the right kind of water. And so this water that I say is the best is distilled water that you add the atomic calcium to and colloidal minerals to, and now you've got something that'll support your endocrine system, maintaining the ideal 10 to 4 ratio of calcium to phosphorus in your blood, supporting your metabolic enzyme production, supporting your pH, your oxygen levels in your cells. It's protective of cancer. It's protected. It maintains bone density the rest of your whole life. And if you have that bone density in your jawbone, you're not going to have gum recession and tooth loss. So you get to keep your teeth your whole life, like they do in Hansa, as opposed to lose your teeth in your 80s, or 70s. So that's my experience after working with Bream stuff for quite a while over the years. That the better, I believe that the better pH number for the saliva is 7 to 7.5, 7.5 being the best. That's based on Carl Reich's work. And urine pH is 6.8 or lower. It's not, you can't control it because the foods you eat change the pH of the urine. It can vary drastically from alkaline to acid. So it's because it's a waste product. The saliva is the most important pH indicator of the health of your body, not your urine.
Okay.
So
that's interesting. And it is interesting about the change in the pH scale. I had never thought about that.
yeah.
I wanted to ask a question, Stephen, and this is just slightly off topic, but I think because you mentioned the water that the Hansa people drank, my husband and I are currently testing a device from Norway. It was first represented to us as a water filter or a water purifier, but I think that the rep, they didn't speak clear English. They spoke Norwegian, and I think there was a little bit lost in the translation and understanding there. So we met with the inventor and the primary bigwigs, I guess, of the company who make this, and we've discovered that this is actually intended to be a water structuring device.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on structured water?
There's 4 types of water. So there's, of course, liquid water, steam water, and then frozen water, and then the 4th phase of water, which is called the water in the human body, which is a gel type structure. So anytime you can improve the water structure so that the body can more easily make it into a gel liquid, the better. That's what you want. And so, according to one researcher, he says that ideally water should be in long single file strand water molecules, like pearl necklace. Because on the surface of your cells, you've got this thing called the aquaporine, and the aquaporine only permits 1 molecule of water to enter the cell at a time. And so if the water is clustered water, a lot of people have in the past talked about microclustering. So that's just like, 5, 8, 10 molecules of water bound together, small clusters of water. Well, the body won't absorb that into the cell. The body will first have to expend energy to make it into individual water molecules before it's going to let it in. So the idea that the water should be either pearl necklace or as individual water molecules is the preferred way to get water. I use a distiller called the Electron 5 distiller to make all my water, because the bond angle changes when you heat the water up multiple times. The way this is designed, it will cause evaporation of the water, and then the water condenses, comes back down as drops. It causes evaporation and does that multiple times before it comes out as drops of water. And that changes the bond angle from 104 to 114 degrees. And that change makes it so, theoretically, now there's no studies on this, but just experientially, that the body can break it apart into hydrogen and oxygen as opposed to use it just as water. And that it carries more energy. And that the body can use it structurally to make more of this gel-like water in your system, physiological water. And it's also lower in deuterium. So deuterium is H3O, and so that's called heavy water. And it's toxic to the human body. And based on a study that I read where they took lab rats that had cancer and divided them as a group in half, one group got regular water with regular levels of deuterium. The other group got deuterium depleted water where there's lower levels, and the group that got that water lived, and the group that didn't died of their cancer.
Isn't heavy water used to make bombs or something?
I think so. Hydrogen bombs, yeah.
Yeah.
So deuterium, distilling it the way that this electron 5 distiller distills it, makes it so you get much lower levels of deuterium in the water. And so it's more health giving from that standpoint as well. So that's the water that I prefer. But yeah, you can structure it with magnets. Like I've got a device called the hexahedron. So it's a pipe that water passes through, and there's fins that vortexes. So it vortexes when it goes through the pipe. And then there's also various quartz crystals and gold dust inside the sleeve that's around as a insulation around the pipe. And that water, when you pass water through it, it produces not only healthier structure, so plants absorb it better, but it also increases it puts into the water what's called a biophoton. And so a biophoton under a microscope looks like a little Star of David of light. And I've raised fruit trees with this kind of water, and they grow like crazy. They grow really well. They produce tons of fruit. And so
That's one of the claims of this is that if you use it on your garden, there was a group of people, I forget where I think it was in the Orient somewhere, their business was growing sweet potatoes. And when they used water from this structuring device, their sweet potatoes, instead of taking 5 months to mature, matured in 3 months.
Yeah.
So they grew much better, much faster. So
yeah, so I'm sure that's a good thing to use, and I would use it, for sure. And I don't understand what specifically structuring is doing to the water itself, other than the results have been beneficial for plants, so they've got to be beneficial for people.
yeah, that's kind of what they're saying at this juncture. They don't really understand everything that's happening, but the results are phenomenal. They say that this is some type of piezoelectric device.
Okay.
So that's what's happening there with that. It's quite heavy for a little device. It's kind of heavy, but anyway, our jury is still out on that. So Stephen, let's wrap this up. So in order for someone this is just a thumbnail, real summary. In order for someone to reverse bone loss, osteoporosis, this type of thing, you mentioned several things. Just quickly go over those 1, 2, 3, and then let's go over the 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, things that you recommend that people take to help with that. Just in summary.
Okay, yeah. So basically, there's a vitamin component, a hormone component, a protein component, and a mineral component.
Boom, boom, boom. Good job. Okay.
Yeah. So then to address that, the minerals would be atomic calcium, colloidal minerals, and silica. Or if you're not vegan, vegetarian, it could be the collagen protein powder, collagen peptide. And then the hormone component would be Synergy 1, because that raises your IGF-1 growth hormone levels, which activates bone formation and cartilage repair. So lots of joint health improvements can happen. And then the protein component would be the collagen, but you're also addressing the protein component from silica, and you're also addressing it partly from the effect of taking Synergy 1. So there's a little bit of overlap. And then vitamin component is vitamin A, D, and K2. So there's different ways of getting that. I personally use and recommend Rosita cod liver oil, because it's the only cold extracted cod liver oil, least oxidized, tastes the best. Do that with Megaquin D3. So Megaquin D3 gives you a more generous dosage of vitamin D that's in the cod liver oil, plus gives you a generous dosage of 200 micrograms of K2. And so that's the vitamin, and we did the hormone, we did the mineral, and then the protein, and we covered. So those are, all the products that if you take about 4, and then if you want to do the protein component more, you go to the bioregulatory peptide with Osteo 3 Plus or Sigomir. And then that's gonna, because there's different ways your body can make proteins, and one is telling the cell to absorb amino acids, which is what Synergy 1 does. And the other is the peptide binds to the DNA of the cell and signals the DNA to produce the proteins inside the cell that enables it to become a normal, healthy, younger cell. So that's the Sigomir. And the Sigomir is, or it's Osteo 3 Plus has got 3 peptides with Sigomir in it. I have the Osteo 3 in stock right now, not the Sigomir, but I'll get it. So if you did that one, that repairs protein structure, collagen protein structure from another angle, so you get a faster repair. And again, if funds permit to do them all.
Okay. I have a quick question now. The silica, a lot of people that follow our work ask me questions about using diatomaceous earth or bamboo or horsetail herb and things like this as a form of silica. How would that compare? Is it just the bioavailability here
Yeah.
in the liquid? Okay.
Yeah, the bioavailability in the liquid, and that product also comes in capsules. It's the size. So the science that this guy figured out how to reduce silica down to a particle size so small that your body fully absorbs it. And now silica does what it's supposed to do to support the collagen connective tissue synthesis of the body and the structural component that it is of your hair, skin, and nails. So, your hair might grow faster when you're on that product. And I just found out from somebody recently that gray hair is largely the result of a lack of tyrosine, the amino acid tyrosine, that's responsible for making the melanin pigment for your hair. And so that's another, just side thing that I wanted to bring in because I just learned it recently. They have some company in England, I think it is. I'm going to try and get their product. You can apply it topically to make your hair dark again.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, Stephen, I think we've given folks a lot to chew on here. And there's so many things that I have to restrain myself because I want to ask so many questions and go down so many rabbit holes. But I think that for helping people to understand what they can do for bone loss, gum recession, this kind of thing, I think we've covered a lot of things fairly well. Is there anything as we wrap up that you think you need to add or that you would like to add to this conversation?
I mean, there's always other components to your health. So to the degree that you have malabsorption, I had chronic constipation for 24 years from mercury poisoning. So transit time of nutrients through my gut was much slower.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's things that need to be done to make your GI tract health good. So your absorption of nutrients
Yes.
is good. So that's another component. A lot of people suffer from partial to significant constipation and don't know it's because of the mercury fillings they had in their teeth in the past that put, the mercury went in the gut, killed enough nerves that they lost peristalsis to the degree that they did. So I have
Interesting.
expertise in reversing that and helping the gut heal completely. So yeah, there's other components to your health that complement your ability to restore bone density, and gut health is one of them.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And that's kind of what we focus on, is helping people with gut health. And I guess, I I did a talk for a group of people in Jamaica one time, and I talk a lot about liver toxicity and care of the liver and stuff. And for that same group, I did a talk on parasites. And I found out later that they nicknamed me the liver lady in Jamaica, and I was
Huh.
eternally grateful they didn't nickname me the parasite lady. So anyway, but I do believe parasites are a huge component in this whole picture. And
Yes.
I have seen tremendous results just doing a parasite detox on people. So yeah, there's a whole lot to this, and there's so much to learn. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. Stephen, thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you,
And
Danna.
Lord willing, maybe we'll see you again.
I appreciate that. Always appreciate the
Okay.
opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us.